So today I want to talk about the 6 foundations or the 6 keys to sexual mastery for men. And the reason that I want to talk about this is because one of the main issues that I see when men struggle with sexuality is because they're approaching it from an angle that is not going to help them to find the solution. And I think this is common for any area of life where we struggle. The reason we struggle is because we're kind of not looking at it from a perspective that's going to be helpful, but we're looking in the wrong places. And to make that worse, our society, mainstream view on sexuality, porn, religious dogma, conditioning, the way we've been brought up, taboos around sex, all of those things are not helping. All of those things are also sending men off in a direction looking for answer where they won't find any help. So the way I work with this and understand these things is that when we have nourished ourselves from within in a way that we have worked on ourselves, in a way that we can be supporting ourselves from within in all the vital areas, in the vital areas that are not just related to our sexuality, but also related to our well-being, physically, emotionally, energetically, mentally, in our life, then things seem to work really well naturally. And that's the amazing thing with nature, that when we have our needs fulfilled and we are healthy and alive and awake, then things seem to happen in a great way naturally. It's like synchronicity. When we are really connected, things seem to flow in a way that it's more amazing than we could have created it if we sort of really tried to do it amazingly. Like, you can put all the pieces into doing something and doing it really by ticking off each step. And I mean, if you're creating maybe a machine or something, that's probably the way to go about it. But if we're talking about sex and lovemaking and intimacy, then ticking off the steps and doing everything the correct way is very likely not going to give you incredible sex or magic, ecstatic sex, but it's probably going to be more of a bit mechanical or technical or monotonous, because the most important ingredient that goes into lovemaking and amazing sex is the spirit that runs through it. It's what you bring to it. It's the energetic quality, the heart and the connection that you bring to it. And when you bring that in yourself, what happens is that flow of heart and spirit and aliveness and the sexual life force, it guides you. It guides you in a way that you can trust that energy. You can trust that energy to show you the way to make love, to guide you into the most amazing positions, to guide you into synchronicity in connecting with each other. That is never an exact step formula. It's never the same thing. But it's always different. It's always different because it's organic in each moment, because every moment is different. Every person, every moment with every person is different. If you repeat what worked last time with your girlfriend, next time, and next time, and next time, and next time, you're not going to have magic sex. And this is what a lot of women complain about, that it's just the same. They might have been married for 20 years and sex is kind of the same. It's monotonous, and we all fall into that pattern. So this is not to give you guys a hard time in any way. And we are creatures of habit as humans. We tend to, this is how our brains work, pick up on a pattern, and then we tend to repeat that. Our thoughts are repeating from day to day. I think they studied that 70% of the thoughts we had yesterday are still the same 70% thoughts that we're having today. So with that in mind, I want to share now the 6 foundations to authentic sexual mastery and sexual awakening, sexual self-empowerment for you as a man, which is the absolute antidote to, the quick fix band-aid tips and approaches that you find online very often, that are maybe just aimed towards telling you like, oh, we'll do this, try that. And they're all sort of just little pieces of information that they can be good, but if you're missing the foundation of actually bringing yourself behind that, then it's probably not going to work anyway. So, which brings it all back to yourself, all back to really connecting yourself deeply and truly to the currents of life that bring magic to the things you do, and really strengthen those connections. And from that place of having really, really strengthened yourself from within, you can trust yourself. You can trust the flow of sexual life force coming through you, and you can trust that it will guide you. So that's probably the most important part of what I wanted to say today, because it is so easy that we get distracted by tips and tricks and, does my penis size matter, or, should I touch it this way, and all of those bits and pieces that in themselves are kind of not important at all. When you put it all together and you really back yourself from within, that's when all those tips and tricks and things can come alive. So this is why I work with foundations in my work, and I rarely answer questions that are very sort of specific in that way, because in themselves, those things, I see them as not very important. The important thing is that you are connecting yourself to the divine magic life force within you, and when you let that life force guide you, you know how to make love. You know exactly. You don't need to think about it. You can trust it and know that you will be guided into the most exquisite lovemaking, whether you're by yourself or with a partner. So let's get into it. So the first foundation is your thinking. And this is also valid for every other area of life, because our language, our internal language, our word is literally spelling our reality. It's a spell. The way we use our words, we cast a spell into our reality that will determine what kind of reality we will experience. So this is why it's so important to be vigilant and aware of what language you're using in yourself, in your thoughts, silently in your own head, as well as how you speak out loud. And you might be aware, as an example, if you take a certain area of life where you excel, something that you're really good at, something that comes natural for you and you're really great at, if you look at your thinking around that subject and what you tell yourself about that, you can be sure that the things you say to yourself about that thing that you're really good at are very affirmative and sure, certain, self-assured, confident, naturally, like easy, like, yeah, I just do it, I just know that. And you just, whatever, look at it for yourself and just examine, and you will find out that the language around the things that you're great at will be supportive. But when it comes to something where you may be not as confident, so let's just imagine that there would be some kind of sexual challenge, like premature ejaculation or erectile challenges, or just not feeling confident in bed, whatever it might be, then there is most definitely some thoughts that you have, some beliefs and some things that you say to yourself around this particular issue that is not supporting. And that's where we need to start, because if you want to start to try and change your sexual experiences, but you're not looking at what you're telling yourself about that thing, then you're already kind of working, uphill. It's not going to work very well, whatever you try to do. So this is why we start with your internal language, to make sure that you've busted any old beliefs that are preventing you from actually moving forward in the most effective way. And our beliefs are, by definition, what we believe to be true. So very often we're not aware of that they are beliefs. We think they're facts. We think this is just the way it is, And this is the biggest problem. I mean, these are the guys that, um, quite often I'll talk to a man who's really, really stuck in the way he looks at his reality and the beliefs he has around his reality. And you can see that it's not going to work. It's not going to work whatever he tries, because he's already decided in his mindset, is already set that his situation is worse. And for him, it's not going to work because he's already tried, and he's already basically completely committed to his situation the way it is, that he's already in, and that is not going to change, and then it won't. So this is why the mindset is so important when we start a new venture, whatever that might be. And we use different ways to work with belief changing and really getting vigilantly aware of how you create your reality with your language, which will then always overflow into other areas of life, which is really exciting. So when you start to work this way with your sexuality, you're not going to change just your sexuality, you will change every area of life, will benefit. And the second foundation, which is the real work in a way, the way most guys are looking forward to, and the stuff that you might not get from anywhere else, and that's the sexual practices and sexual self practices, because you don't need to have a partner to do this work. You can do most of it by yourself, which is why it's also really great to do when you're single, when you actually might have a bit more time to spend on yourself, to build the skill in preparation for the next relationship. Because very often that's the belief that a lot of guys have, that I can't work on my sexuality because I don't have a partner. I need a partner first. And it's the other way around. It's much better to start working on it when you're on your own, so you can really focus that time on connecting up your own body in every way that's going to support you. So the sexual practices that we use are based on Taoist tradition and works with the sexual life energy flow through the body. So I'm not going to go too much into that today, but in a big way, it is very much a pattern interrupt and a complete change of the way that most guys have used the sexual energy. So the way biology has your sexual life force come through the body is that it starts to build up in the lower parts of your body, in your groin, from when you're a teenager, you start to notice that, and you start to feel sexual urge, and the urge to masturbate and have sex, and then the urge to ejaculate. When the energy builds up in the lower parts of the body, most guys get to a point where they can't hold it back anymore, and they will ejaculate no matter what. And then that becomes imprinted when you masturbate to ejaculate for many years, and especially together with porn, it becomes further programmed into the body that's the pattern of arousal and ejaculation. So the male arousal curve goes something like that, very sharp. Most guys can get aroused very fast, and then ejaculation, and then the energy goes down. And some guys can build it again, but many can't, or after that it won't quite be the same. And that pattern is what most men have been operating within their whole lives. And this is also You know, the male arousal pattern is also what's the foundation behind all the mainstream sex and pornography. So porn is based on the male arousal model. And because it's become so mainstream and the alternatives are so little known, what's happened is that the women of the world have also been led to believe that they should fit into this pattern of getting fast aroused, orgasm, and you know that the orgasm in that is that focus, that excitement based fast friction sex that leads to climax. And our whole world is obsessed with peak orgasm and climax type of sex. And that is because our mainstream sex has been based on the male arousal model. And the male arousal model is very unsustainable in the long run, because if you look at it, a man who has, you know, had that type of sex, of masturbation with porn, ejaculating every time you masturbate, which for some guys, well, for some guys that's many times a day. For some guys it's once a day. So for some guys it's maybe just, you know, once a week. I think it's more than once a week for most men, but for some it's not. But if you always have trained yourself to have sex and ejaculate every time, then that's been programmed into your body. And it's a depleting circuit, a depleting cycle that over time it does deplete life force, because sperm is so rich in vital life force and nutrients and lots of things. So for the young guys, you might not notice this very much, even though some young men notice it as well. But as you get a bit older, most men notice that very much, so that the sexual energy is diminishing. And when they get to maybe middle age, a lot of guys start to not get erections as easily anymore. And it's become kind of a commonly known thing that, you know, he struggles to get it up. And by that time, very often his partner is not so much into sex anyway. And that's very much become a norm with a lot of long-term relationships and married couples. And that's unfortunately a result of the mainstream approach to sex that is entirely orgasm focused, because it doesn't need to be like that. When you learn to work with your sexual life force, you don't deplete the energy, because you learn to cultivate and build that life force in your body, so you can stay strong and vital and empowered and be able to make love for as long as you want and as long in your life as you want, until you get old, until the very, you know, last days of life. We can still make love when you don't deplete your life force, when you don't have sex to ejaculate. So this is, for some men, this is still such a new way of understanding the sexuality, and it is literally life-changing, life-transforming once you start working with this, because it'll turn everything around. You don't need to deplete your life force anymore. You don't need to start to weaken yourself, but you start to actually empower yourself, which can give many men the feeling of incredible vitality and incredible charisma, and feeling really sexually alive and empowered, and being able to use that energy not just to masturbate and ejaculate or watch porn, but actually use that energy as life force to empower and fuel your everyday activities, your ability to do your work, to do business, to connect, and to do all the other things you want in life, because you're no longer depleting that energy through ejaculation. So, so that energy that you're not depleting through ejaculation, you have that for yourself. And it doesn't mean that you don't get to orgasm. So if you're new to this, you might go, but what about the orgasm? I want my orgasm. And it's not about giving up the orgasm, but it's about surrendering the attachment to the orgasm that's attached to the ejaculation, because those are two separate things. Orgasm and ejaculation are two separate things, and you can learn to separate them so that you can have orgasms and better orgasms, more full-bodied orgasms, orgasms that last a lot longer than the normal ejaculatory orgasm. And so in this way, you can become omni-orgasmic and multi-orgasmic without the need to deplete your energy. And yes, so I know if you're new, this might sound really, really kind of out there. And I'd love to hear from you if you want to know more about this. And also, if you want to find out more about the men who have, experienced this, I can definitely point you towards men who, testimonies and men that I've worked with that have cracked the code to this way of experiencing their sexual life force that is, incredibly life changing. And in saying that, this way of cultivating your sex energy will resolve issues like premature ejaculation, improve and resolve issues like erectile challenges, delayed ejaculation, lack of confidence, feeling like excess sexual energy, guys that struggle with feeling like too horny, too much energy, feeling the need to watch porn and relieve themselves. It very effectively works with those issues as well. When you learn to balance and cultivate and circulate the sexual energy, it resolves that feeling of always being like overpowered by your own sexual life force, where you actually become the one in power rather than the other way around. So very important chunk, that one. But as you're gonna see, that part alone is amazing, but it's still not the whole picture, because there's other parts of this that are also so important. For example, the next key, which is your presence and your conscious awareness. So I work with this with my clients, and this is a part that some guys get it naturally very easily, whereas some others struggle, because most of us have not been taught how to cultivate conscious presence and awareness. But a lot of people are very scattered, very much in their heads, nervous, anxious, always on their phones, always drawn outwards to external stimulation. So for most people, to start to bring the energy back in towards conscious awareness is a new thing. And I just want to say that it is a super important part for two main reasons. The first reason is that your conscious presence is like your anchor inside yourself. It's the anchor for being able to hold your wild sexual life energy. When you start to really cultivate this energy and work with this energy, it's a very, very powerful force, your sexual life force. And to be able to effectively harness and hold this energy, you need this anchor of inner presence. So this is what you're going to rely on to hold yourself safely and pace yourself when you really start working with hot sexual life force. And the other way that your presence is so important is because it is the quality in you that the feminine desires the most. So I talk to a lot of men, a lot of women as well, over the years, as well as men. And it seems to always in conversation with women come back to, in maybe in different words, but come back to over and over again, that this is the quality that they so want and crave from the men, but they often feel like they don't get. Like men try so hard. You try so hard at doing the right thing and in pleasing her, connecting with her, but it's very often missed, and it's in that subtle undercurrent of presence that your woman can feel or not feel safe with you. You might be doing all the right things, but if she feels that you're not really there, you're not able to look her in the eye with a solid, relaxed gaze, you're not actually really present when you're connecting with her, but you're a little bit distracted, or you're worried, or thinking about something else, or thinking about your next move, whether she's aware of it consciously or not, she will pick up on it subconsciously, and she will not feel safe with you. And for a woman to be able to relax into her sexuality, into the full potency of her sexual pleasure, she must feel safe on a deep level. If she doesn't, she's just not going to go there. And she might come up with other reasons. She might not be consciously aware of this herself, but she will know that she doesn't want to go there with you. Whereas if you can bring deep, solid, masculine, conscious presence to your interactions with her, that she can really feel that you got this. You got this moment. You're there with her. She can rely on you. Then she can relax with you. She can relax, and she can start to explore and surrender into her deeper pleasure, which is very much an act of courage for the feminine, more so than for the men, because she literally takes you inside her body. Her sexual pleasure, her deep sexual pleasure, really requires her surrender. And she's not going to do that unless she feels that she can trust you. So trusting is not just about knowing that you will, pay for the bills or support her and the kids, and do the right way in the worldly matters. But it's that energetic foundation of feeling that you're actually there with her. And this is a challenge for us in the modern world, because you guys are so busy. You got so much responsibility, so much to do. There's so many stresses in most people's lives that it really takes a conscious practice to bring us back to that baseline of presence in our day-to-day connections with each other and ourselves. So I saw an article talking about how meditators are the best lovers, and I would like to agree to that. Of course, there's always exceptions, but I think the reason is for sure that meditators practice this. They practice conscious presence. And once you start to have a practice of meditation or conscious awareness, it becomes second nature. So it's a lot easier for you to tap into that. And especially to be able then to hold that energy when you're in a lovemaking situation with a woman that is completely mesmerizing and gorgeous, and it's very easy to get overwhelmed by all that passion and lose that conscious presence. So that's why this part is super important and very often forgotten. So the next part that we're going into is the full body embodiment. And that's my favorite part, actually. I mean, they're all great, but it's an amazing part because it's so key. It's so key in making this real in your whole body. So a lot of guys, or women as well, we think of sex as something that we do with each other. And porn has sort of taught us that sex is all about certain body parts and positions and climax. Whereas our sexual life force is the energy that fuels us from within in every part of our bodies. But most of us have not learned to allow ourselves to experience our sexuality and our sexual life force in our whole body. But we've very much been conditioned to limit this to a purely genital experience. So this has to do with conditioning, how we grew up, how we were, allowed or not allowed to express ourselves through our bodies. So most of us, when we grew up as very young, maybe already as toddlers, we're taught to sit properly, walk properly, don't run, just walk, to behave. So we slowly learn to limit our movements in a way that is socially and culturally accepted and appropriate. This is why you see most people walk in the same way. They walk, sit, stand. We all do that in ways that are very similar. Whereas when you look at little kids, they do things in very different ways because they're still free in the way that they don't just sit on the chair. They kind of hang on the chair and wiggle on the chair, and they go underneath the chair, and they do something else with the chair, and you know. So for most of us adults, we have limited our range of movements in a way that we've effectively cut off ourselves from our own embodiment. And embodiment is very much a buzzword these days, and it can seem quite illusory in a way that you can't really understand it theoretically. You got to experience it to know it. And an example of embodiment, like if you've been sitting in your office the whole day and you're sitting a lot, and then you know, after a while of sitting down, you're not embodied anymore. You kind of, things aren't flowing, they're not connecting. You start to feel a bit of aches and pain. You feel a bit heavy. You feel gravity like really kind of pulls you down in a way, you know. Whereas if you get into doing something very physical, like if you play some sports or go running and really exert yourself, I'm not talking just about a gentle walk in the park now, even though that's good too. It's not going to do it. Gentle walks in the park are not enough for embodiment, even though they're better than no walk in the park. But it's, a lot of people say like, yeah, but I walk, you know. Yes, that's great, but it's not enough for embodiment. You actually need to get into using your body in a way that you do exert yourself and you really use the muscles. You really get the blood flow happening in the whole body. And then just, you know, I'm sure all of you have experienced that at some point. Notice what you feel like afterwards, after you've done really strenuous exercise. It's like you've come back home into yourself. You can really feel alive. You feel everything is connected and flowing, and you feel naturally strong. Even if you exerted yourself, you still feel alive and strong and vital, and lots of other things too. And that's the sensation when you're back home in the body. And from that place, everything works a lot better. Because once you're really in the body will guide you to how to use it. When we're not embodied, we do kind of stupid things, like we do movement that are kind of half-hearted. We reach out to get something, but we're not actually in the body, so we end up hurting ourselves. And but if you actually embodied, then you will use your body in a way that's much more makes sense and much more empowered from within. So you're a lot less likely to hurt yourself if you're embodied than if you're not embodied. And you see that, like, again, with little kids, they sit properly. If you see a little child sitting on the floor, they always sit with a beautifully straight back. And as we get older, we start hunching, and that's a sign of, you know, embodiment being lost for a long time. And then, you know, illness and problems and issues start to build up. The energy isn't flowing. And if we then go to have sex and make love, we are very limited. We're very limited to make love with a body that is jammed up, that is stiff and tense and not flexible. And that's when sex can feel like a very localized experience just in the genitals, because the rest of the body is not really connected. And we can't experience our pleasure to the fullest potential. As opposed to when we are really in the body and we actively use our body to connect all the nerve endings on a daily basis, then pleasure is something that can be experienced in everything, not just in sex and masturbation, but with the whole body. We are incredibly sensual beings, and even just feeling the light breeze on the skin or sun on our skin, or just moving under the bed linen when you're naked in bed, is such sensual, exquisitely sensual experiences. And we can have orgasmic experiences in so many different ways that are not just genital. But that requires that we are actively working on our embodiment and coming home into the body and using the whole body to connect with life. And from this place, there's no limit to how much pleasure we can experience. You know, I get sometimes, I still do a bit of massage, a bit of body work for local people that live in my area. I used to do a lot more years ago, but these days I still do a little bit of that. It's really good for me. It keeps me in the reality of things. And I had an inquiry from someone who was asking, and it was just really interesting because I've had that kind of question many times when a guy is kind of questioning what sensual is, because so many guys see sensual as only sexual. If it's sensual, it's got to be involving his cock, right? So this is just such an example of the thinking that no, sensual is actually your whole body. If you allow yourself to experience that, if you allow yourself to really come alive, then your whole body is sensual. Your whole body is erotic. But for so many people, it's so localized to genitals. The rest of the body is not really connected, that all he can think of is that sensual's got to do with his cock. And when I say that it's not, it's actually the whole body, then they go, what? Huh? How do you do that? How's that possible? You know? So, yes, that's the embodiment piece. So let's jump into the next piece, which is the conscious touch. And I know that a lot of guys are interested in this as well because it's amazing. Touch is so amazing. And what I love about this piece of conscious touch is that it really builds on all the previous chunks that we just talked about. Because if you're going to touch someone, but you're in your head, you're not present, you're not embodied, and you're thinking kind of, you know, you're doubting yourself in your head, it doesn't matter if you then kind of know a good place to touch. It's probably not going to feel great for the person receiving because the foundations are not there. So this is where, in the same way, that's where we need to start to make sure that you're backing yourself internally. You know, if you got insecurities around touching someone, oh, I wonder if they're going to like it, are my hands too cold, you know, maybe they don't like it, then chances are that that's going to then come through your energy, and the other person will feel something a bit like, they will feel your insecurity, and that is usually a little bit uncomfortable. So, but when you do back yourself with, you know, I've got this, my body knows how to massage, when I tune into myself, I trust myself, and I stay present, then my hands know what to do, for example, things like that. Make sure you support yourself from within. And the conscious presence, super important, and that you get to that through connecting with yourself first. So often we reach out to touch before we actually home in ourselves, and so we kind of a little bit a step ahead of ourselves. So it always helps to bring it back to yourself first, and first of all connect with yourself. Make sure you connect with your breath, and make sure you come back home into your own body. You can touch yourself a bit first, you know, connect with yourself, and activate your hands. Activating your hands is a practice that I've shown in this group several times, I think, in the old videos that I hashtagged. What is it again? I forget the name now. Was it Tantalizing Touch? I think it was the Thursday videos. Yeah, the touch videos. There's like 7 of them or something about touch. If you want to go back and look them up in this group. So it's about activating your hands, and you can do that with your conscious awareness. Allow the energy to start to flow in your hands. And you do that just by bringing your intention. In the moment you bring your intention to awakening your hands, they will start to come alive. You will actually feel that your hands start to come alive. And you might feel buzzing, tingling sensation in your hands. If you've ever done Reiki or experienced Reiki, that's how that works. You know, the energy comes through the body, through your body, and all the way through your hands. So you become a vehicle or a channel for universal healing energy, and you allow it to come through your body and through your hands. And then when you place those hands on your own body, is always great to start first, to place them on your own body first. So you can actually feel your own touch, both in your hands, and you can also feel it in your own body. And from that place, you can touch another person in a way that's connected and activated, and allowing your energy to flow. Most problem with massage and touch when it doesn't feel right is because we're actually not trusting ourselves, but we're holding back. If we're holding back because of insecurity, then that can come across as a bit weird or creepy. But when you back yourself from within, connecting with your breath and with your heart and with your conscious awareness, and then allow that to come through your hands, allow yourself to be guided, then touch will be beautiful. And you don't need really to know any specific modes or moves or spots, but you can actually trust your body to know and let your body guide you to where to touch and how to do it. So this takes practice. I realize that if that's something you haven't done, for most people we're so stuck on trying to figure it out with our heads, and that interferes with this process. When you try and think, then we often muck it up when it comes to these kind of things. Thinking is very useful in many areas of life, but when it comes to sex, love, intimacy, and touch, thinking usually kind of tends to ruin things. And that doesn't mean that it's not great to learn techniques. We can still learn techniques for massage. If you do a massage course or something like that, that is great. But along the lines of learn the technique and then forget about it. Forget about it and let yourself be guided in this way that I've just described. So that's the conscious touch part of allowing everything from within to come through your hands. And to, first of all, give that to yourself. Give that to yourself in your self-pleasure, in connecting with your whole body, with your own sensuality, awakening yourself first. And when we do that, then when you have awakened yourself first and supported yourself from within, then it all comes so much more easy. Because it is natural to you. It is natural to us. To express ourselves as sensual and sexual beings is natural to us. We already know this when we remove all the obstacles, the conditioning, and all the places where we have closed down and limited ourselves. So when we work on opening ourselves and connecting from that place, when we connect and we flow, then we can trust. And the trust itself will bring brilliance, will bring excellence, will bring incredible synchronicity and beauty and connection to our connection with, our lovers, our beloveds. And the last chunk, the sixth chunk, is the relationship gold. So, it would be weird to talk about this topic without bringing in the aspect of relating and relationships and connection, because that's where it really, the proof is in the pudding. You can do all the work by yourself and prepare yourself, which is really, in the way I see it, the best way to do it, to really prepare yourself from within first, and then bringing it to the relationship. And the relationships has, all the different things that relationships do, all the different quirks and patterns and little wounds and, all the little things that we have, especially in, relationships that have been going on for a while. And that's where, it's an amazing work as well, in if you really want to have great sex and intimacy with your partner. That is a crucial part. It's not just about being, an amazing lover physically and energetically and heartfelt, but it's also how to bring this into the relationship. So the way I work with this with my clients is helping them to see how they can create a couple bubble, which is a name for when we have connection in the relationship that is like a safe bubble where we are really connected and where we have trust. Because when we have trust, then things work out beautifully again. But when we don't have that trust, then things can be difficult. When we lost that feeling of the couple bubble, then things can seem be very complicated, as we know. So most people have a couple bubble in the beginning of a relationship, most, but not all. But then we quite often lose that after the first few months of, high hormones and infatuation has subsided. Then if we don't know how to maintain that, it's very easy that we lose the couple bubble, and then things can start to become difficult. So the way we focus on this work is to bring the couple bubble back, and to look at all the different ways that we can bridge the gap and connect in again, how to create the connection. Because when we have the connection, then things work out very well. Same thing with kids. If we try and teach kids things or tell them things or get them to do the right thing, if we lost the connection, it is not going to work. But if we work on the connection first, then cooperation and communication and all those things seem to happen a lot easier. So I'm not going to go much into that either, but the relationship part is about bridging the gap and recreating the couple bubble, looking at how we can come back into synchronicity again. And from that place, it's so much easier to meet and connect beautifully, intimately. So I'm going to have one more check and see if there's any comments here before I think we're done for today. I have one more check and see if there's any comments. Okay. So yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments or private message me. And have a beautiful day wherever you are, day or night, wherever you are in the world. I hope you got a lot of value from this, and I will see you soon again. Okay, bye now.